Hey, there, I'm Tala, just an ordinary stay-at-home wife. My husband, John, and I were classmates in college and hit it off right away. From the time we met, John always had high aspirations and a strong desire to move out of his parents' house. Don't you think you're rushing things? No, I don't want to rely on my parents anymore. But we're still students. That's the point. We have so much time. Now I want to do everything I can. I, on the other hand, was all too happy to enjoy college life to the fullest. Being in the same department made our relationship seem natural. By our junior year, John was ready to set his plan in motion. It's going to get busy from here. Will you help me? Of course. What do I need to do? Thanks. First, John's plan was to start a company while still in school. The reason he gave was the same as before, but there was another. It was already decided that he would join his father-in-law's company after graduation. He wanted to carve out his own future. A month later, we successfully launched the company. It's just the beginning, but we've finally taken the first step. Thank you. What are you talking about? It's too early for thanks. The real challenge is just beginning. Indeed, counting on you moving forward. Leave it to me. It was a venture that John, I, and a few others put together, a company created to operate a media platform providing various information from games and comics to useful life hacks. We expanded into various media, but the one John really focused on was a website providing information about adoption. By the way, I've always wanted to ask, why did you start an adoption site? A friend of mine from high school was adopted. The more I heard his stories, the more interested I got. It's always about the adopting side, but adopted kids have their own thoughts, right? Now that you mention it, that makes sense. So I wanted to help out. John would end up running that site almost by himself. Meanwhile, the company thrived, praised for its vast amount of information, accuracy, and above all, the humor John cherished, even getting a small mention in magazines. But one day just before graduation, you seem a bit down today, don't you? Yeah, I told my parents about the company yesterday and they blew up at me. Why? They probably wanted me to get a proper job. Particularly Mom was really furious. Even after hearing this, John occasionally looked gloomy. Sometimes he couldn't sleep until morning and even got prescribed sleeping pills. Seeing him like this, I decided to support him for life. The day before our graduation, John finally managed to persuade them, and I felt I saw his genuine smile for the first time in a while. Now I'm finally free. Now you can live for yourself. Speaking of which, do you want to move in together? Yeah, of course. Our life together, both work and private, began to flourish. This went on for about 4 years until my birthday. Happy birthday. Thank you. It never gets old being celebrated like this. Hearing you say that makes me happy too. So, John got serious, took out a small box from his pocket, and placed it on the table. What's this? I want you to marry me. When John opened the box, a sparkling little ring was inside. Of course, my heart had been set on this for a long time. I'm the one who should be asking you. Please always be by my side. He took my hand and slid the ring on it. It fitted perfectly, but there was one thing that bothered me. Why is the box a little bent? I was wondering when to give it to you. I've been holding it in my pocket the whole time, and it ended up like this. He must have been really nervous. Hearing this, I fell even more in love with him. The only issue was meeting the parents. Are you okay? I'm fine. No, actually, I'm nervous. I'm with you, so it's okay, right? We first greeted my parents, and there were no issues at all. They accepted John. Today, we're meeting his parents. From the moment we left the house, John seemed somewhat uneasy. What are you doing back here? This is my family's home, so it should be fine. Well, okay. Come in quickly. Watching their exchange, I really wondered if everything would be okay. In the living room, his father and an unfamiliar girl were sitting on the sofa. "Good to see you back, John. Please have a seat." When his mother offered us tea, there was none for me, which explained I wasn't very welcome. To get to the point, I'm here today because I plan to marry this lady, Tala. "Is that so? You're at that age now?" Marrying such a mysterious woman calmed down a bit. But it's John's decision. It's not our place to criticize. Eventually, with my father-in-law's persuasion, we were allowed to marry. Then the girl sitting next to my father-in-law spoke up. "Congratulations on your marriage, brother." "Thank you, Jolie. Let's get along with each other, Tala." "Likewise. I want to know about you more, Jolly." We never doubted that we were embarking on a happy life together. However, that belief did not last long. On the way back from the greeting, "You have a sister." "Well, yes, but you two don't really look alike." "I'm an only child, so I don't know much about that." "You as well?" "Think we do not look alike as well." "Sorry, it's nothing. Let's just hurry home, okay?" At that moment, I thought John's face looked a bit surprised. Later on, our marriage registration was accepted, and we officially became husband and wife. The excitement was unstoppable, but our life as a newlywed couple would come to an abrupt end after just 1 week. "Hey, why are you here?" "I have something important to discuss today. Let me in." "Wait a minute, please." Without waiting for an answer, my mother-in-law barged in and flung open the living room door. "Why are you here? Isn't that a bit rude to say? So what's the matter?" "Actually, after you guys visited, your father started feeling unwell." "Father did?" "Yes, that's right." According to my mother-in-law, it seems my father-in-law had been prone to health issues for a while. From the look on John's face, it appeared he was unaware of this. Then my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. "It turns out he's been diagnosed with cancer." "What? He wants to recuperate at home, but there's only me and Jolie here, right? So you're saying we should move in?" "Yes, exactly." I felt a chill down my spine seeing my mother-in-law smirk. It was clear John was really struggling with the decision. I knew from our college days that he had a strong desire to leave his family home, but given his father's condition, his hesitation was understandable. As John was struggling to respond, "What do you think?" "Me? I hadn't expected to be put on the spot like that. Obviously, I wasn't prepared." "Well, I think you're not planning to abandon him, are you?" "That's not what I'm thinking at all." "Then what?" "Normally, you'd answer immediately, wouldn't you?" As I was being cornered by my mother-in-law, John stepped in to defend me. "Please stop blaming Tala. We'll move in." "That's a relief. I'll let your father know." "All right then, goodbye." My mother-in-law left with a satisfied look after confirming she was gone. John held his head in his hands. "I'm sorry I've caused trouble for Tala because of me." "Don't apologize. It's not your fault." Just when things were starting to look up, why does something always have to get in my way? "What do you mean?" "Every time I'm about to start something new, something happens." "I'm here with you, right?" "Yeah, that's true." We quickly terminated the lease on our apartment to prepare for moving in with John's parents. From the way my mother-in-law treated me, I could tell the future wasn't going to be bright. Soon enough, our life living with the in-laws began. "I'm glad you could make it. Please, let's get along. But first, there's something I need you to do. Tala, what would that be? My back has been hurting recently for starters. I'd like you to clean the house we hadn't even unpacked yet. Come on. Don't dilly get started from then on." I just did as I was told. John helped me, but my mother-in-law didn't seem to care at all. A week into our new living arrangement, I noticed something. This family revolved around the sister-in-law Jolie, Even though John was part of the family, there were times he felt like an outsider. However, it seemed both the father-in-law and Jolie were somewhat weary of my mother-in-law's antics. Have you started to understand how this family works? Yeah, I'm getting the hang of it. That's why I didn't want to come back here. By the way, what does Jolie think? I don't know. We've lived as siblings, but honestly, I can't tell what she's thinking. Is that so? Indeed, my sister-in-law, Jolie, is personable and has been nice to me, just like John said. There's something oddly mysterious about her, as if she's harboring some darkness inside amidst all this. I've also been tasked with taking care of my father-in-law, and what is my mother-in-law doing? Absolutely nothing. Your father is calling for you. Hurry up and go to him. Yes, before entering the room, I took a deep breath. What do you need? There's something I want your help with. As I approached my father-in-law, shockingly, he slid his hand onto my backside. What are you doing? There's no need to resist so much. This is just family affection. That's not true at all, my mother-in-law had said. Your father-in-law was weakened by cancer treatment. However, with the strength he used to grab my arm and try to pin me down, he didn't seem weak at all. Please, stop. Do you really want John to find out about this? It would cause quite a scandal. At that moment, I involuntarily loosened my resistance, as if waiting for this. My father-in-law began to try to undress me. Realizing the dire situation, I pushed him back with all my might. And then, at the worst possible timing, my mother-in-law walked in. What are you doing? Your husband was trying to pin me down. You know your father would never do such a thing, right? Please believe me. I had completely sought help from the wrong person. Having an affair with your father-in-law while your husband is around? What kind of woman are you? I didn't do anything like that. If you don't want John to find out about this, you'll do as we say. It was a conditional demand. Even though it was my father-in-law's fault, I didn't want John to find out about any of this. I understand. It would be much later when I realized this was a scheme concocted by the two of them. My father-in-law never approached me directly again, but the fear of what he might do never went away. I couldn't focus on work and my mistakes increased. You seem tired lately. Are you okay? Well, yes, maybe you should take a break, but don't worry about work. It's not that, is it? My mother and the rest, leave that to me. Following John's suggestion, I left my job for a while and became a full-time homemaker. Being at home all the time was mentally and physically exhausting, but I couldn't waste John's consideration. He had spoken to his parents to ensure they wouldn't overburden me. Things improved slightly, but the harassment never completely stopped. If you're going to be at home, could you do something more useful? More useful. You're going to follow what I tell you from now on, she said as she handed me a piece of paper. It was a list of items she wanted me to buy. All of this today, of course. Get going if you don't want John to find out. I had no choice but to comply. The list included items from nearby supermarkets to a distant store that required several train rides where she wanted her favorite classic American sweets. I forgot to mention, you'll be paying for it naturally, right? It was already past noon, and if I didn't leave now, I wouldn't be back before John returned home. All I could think about was not wanting to cause any trouble. I got back at 7:00 p.m. I've got everything. It took you this long. Even a child could do this faster enough. Just get out of my sight. I went back to my room and lay down on the bed. I was wondering what on earth I was doing as I stared at the ceiling for a while. Someone knocked on the door. Instinctively, I sat up and responded. The door slowly opened, and there stood my sister-in-law, Jelly. Jelly, what's up? I'm sorry, huh? I should have been more cautious. What are you talking about? About Dad and Mom. My heart almost stopped. You don't have to hide it. You knew. I accidentally overheard Dad and Mom talking. I see. I'll protect you, Tala. I can't let you do that, Jolie. Please let me handle this. I have some plans, but about John, I had been determined to keep this hidden from John at all costs. That will be okay too for me. Unable to share the situation with John, Jolie's presence was incredibly reassuring. I had felt alone, but not anymore. Later, Jolie would make a surprising statement when everyone was together. I've decided to work at John's company from now on. What? What are you talking about? You're attending a good university. You could get a job at a much better company. I've already made up my mind. Jolie is scheduled to graduate from university next year, despite being capable enough to land a job at a much more prestigious place, as our mother-in-law suggested. Why, of all places, does she want to work at John's company? It would be better if it was at least her father's company. Mom, that's enough. Jolie wants to do this. But then my father-in-law whispered something to my mother-in-law. Well, that might be a good idea. She suddenly changed her opinion. This made me wonder what exactly my father-in-law had said, and John, take care of Jolie, will you? Yeah, what kind of response is that really? Once she graduated from college, Jolie officially joined John's company. Being smart and talented, she quickly started to take on various tasks. Around this time, my father-in-law began to treat me unusually kindly. Given the past incident, this newfound kindness only reignited my fears. But then something astonishing happened. Tala, I truly owe you an apology. An apology? Now? Doesn't I understand? That's why I'll talk to Mom, too. I'm genuinely sorry. I was bewildered by what was happening before me. Moreover, my father-in-law even prostrated himself. I'm sorry again, please raise your head, but I still can't trust you. Allow me to observe the situation for a while, understood? That's fine. True to his word, my mother-in-law's harassment stopped abruptly. However, this peace felt like the calm before a storm. While life became more peaceful without the bullying, John's behavior started to become concerning. Aren't you working too much lately? It's a crucial time right now. That may be true, but this is not good. I have to do this now. So why? But John didn't stop. Jelly and I discussed this bizarre situation. What does John want to do? I get it's about work, but I'm sorry, I don't know either. But at this rate, yes, that's why we need to do something about it. We continued to tell John to take more breaks, however, he seemed to dive into his work as if trying to avoid something else. Not only that, but he also started to increase the dose of sleeping pills he had been taking temporarily. Just when I thought we needed to intervene, I received tragic news from my father. My mother was involved in a car accident and never returned home. Please come home immediately. Oh, okay. I was worried about John, but I couldn't bring him along in his current state. With things like this, please take care of John. Yes, leave my brother to me. And so I returned to my family home. Seeing my mother's lifeless body, I was filled with nothing but questions. Did she do something wrong? Good to have you back. Of course I had to come. By the way, what about John? I explained John's situation to my father. I see that. John, huh? I'm worried about John, but now we need to properly send off Mom. Soon after, the preparations for my mother's funeral began and the funeral started. One might expect tears at such times, but I just couldn't cry. When the funeral began, I felt more numbness than sadness. I still couldn't accept the reality that my mother was gone. Before I knew it, the funeral was over. Are you okay? Yeah, but I still can't believe Mom isn't here anymore. I know it feels lacking without our noisy Mom around. That's because you were always up to something and getting scolded, Dad was. Ah, yes, you were. That night, Dad and I stayed up late reminiscing about Mom. I must have fallen asleep on the sofa because the morning sun was already shining in. Did you sleep well? Yes, Tala, you should go back now. Huh? John must be waiting for you. Go back to him. Is that? Okay, I'm sure Mom would have said the same. Then I'll do that. As I was getting up from the sofa to prepare to leave, my phone rang. It was a call from my sister-in-law, Jolie. Hello, Jolie, what's happened? It's my brother. What's happened to John? He wouldn't wake up, so I went to his room immediately. I left my family home and headed to the hospital. Tala, upon spotting me, Jolie ran over. Jolie, I called out as my sister-in-law was shedding large tears. Where's John? When Jolie pointed, I saw John's parents standing there. I sat down on a nearby sofa and slowly approached. As I gently opened the door, someone covered with a white sheet lay there. Inside the room, 2 police officers were waiting. Are you his wife? Yes. What happened to John? We're considering the possibility of suicide. Suicide. That's ridiculous. My hands trembling, I removed the white sheet. There lay John, appearing as if he were sleeping. Suddenly, reality struck me, and I collapsed to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. Jolie came over, helped me up, and took me out of the room. Why would John? I don't understand. I don't understand it either, she said. Jolie mentioned that she became worried when John didn't wake up at his usual time, and when she checked on him, she found him lifeless in bed. Despite calling an ambulance, it was too late, and the police suggested suicide because they found many empty sleeping pill containers in the trash can. John's family had been questioned by the police, but none had seen him since he entered his room. This can't be happening. He was struggling, but he wouldn't leave us like this. I agree. I can't believe you would do this. The autopsy later confirmed suicide by an overdose of sleeping pills. The pills were prescribed to him, and he had been visiting the hospital. Now, after losing my mother, I had to attend my husband's funeral. Same case as my mother's. I couldn't shed a tear, but this time for a different reason. I desperately wanted to know why this had happened. After the funeral, I was resting in the break room. When's it finally over? Who knew funerals could be so exhausting? It's your son's funeral. How can you say such a thing? I'm just stating the facts. We're not alone here, you know. I guess that includes me too, first and foremost. His death is partly this woman's fault. Why am I to blame? I thought she had become more subdued recently, but fundamentally, nothing has changed. Shouldn't we be mourning John's death and reflecting on his life? Yet the complaints against me never stop. My father-in-law tries to calm things down, but it doesn't reach her. If you hadn't married him, he wouldn't have taken his own life. He would have been holding his grandchild by now. Now, Jolie, just back from the restroom, joins in. That's ridiculous. Do you have complaints against me too, Jolie? Complaints? Of course I do. Do you have any idea how much you two have neglected my brother? How can you say that, Jolie? It's not Tala's fault. It's your fault that my brother is dead, she said before storming out. What are you doing? Go after Jolie now, useless, even at a time like this. I clenched my fists as hard as I could. Frustration and anger welled up inside me. Throughout the funeral, my mother-in-law maintained her disdainful attitude towards me. Ignoring her, I followed Jolie and found her sitting on a bench in a nearby park. I found you, Jolie. Let's go home and try to figure out what happened to John. Yes. Once home, I fell asleep immediately, as if to forget everything. And then the next morning, could you get the newspaper quickly? Despite the funeral just ending, there's no sign of mourning. It truly felt like just another morning. Yes, hurry up, please. I could have refused, but my body moved out of habit. If only this were a dream. As instructed, I went to check the mailbox. Tucked in the newspaper was a brown envelope. An envelope? Who could it be from? I took it out to check the sender, but there was no name. Just one sentence was there: to ensure Mom doesn't find out. Those words made me realize to whom and from whom it was sent. I hid the envelope in my pocket and returned inside. "What took you so long? You're no help." I ripped open the newspaper I was holding. I sneaked back to the bedroom and opened the seal. There, written in familiar handwriting, was something shocking. When I finished reading, anger and fear nearly drove me to a rampage. I took a deep breath to calm my trembling body. Just you wait. I immediately sprang into action and headed straight to Jolly's room. "Come in, Tala." There were dark circles under her eyes. They looked swollen, probably from crying all night. "Sorry for the sudden visit, but there's something I need you to see right away." I showed her the letter from John. "Is this? Maybe he predicted this would happen to himself, so he intended to die from the start." The letter began like this: "By the time Tala is reading this, I might no longer be in this world. I wanted to be with you forever, but I couldn't bear it any longer." The letter went on to reveal even more shocking details. It appears that the company run by my father-in-law was having serious financial difficulties and was on the brink of collapse. Furthermore, he had been planning to transfer the company to my sister-in-law, Jolly. Essentially, he was using his beloved daughter to secure funds. If this is true, did I interfere unnecessarily? Not at all. After all, both of you were initially reluctant. Oh, that's why he suddenly changed his opinion. What? Maybe he thought if Jolly joined John's company, transferring it to her would be manageable since she's his sister. That's perhaps what my father-in-law was whispering to my mother-in-law, suggesting such a plan. Honestly, I said those things because I wanted to trouble them. I had a hunch that Dad's company wasn't doing well. Jolly isn't to blame. In the end, it was all for me, right? And the letter ended with this: "I've never been able to say this, but I'm adopted. However, ever since Jolly was born, my position worsened. I'm sorry for keeping silent. Also, there's something I want you to tell Jolly. You're a sister I'm proud of. Although I resented your birth when we were kids, you've always been an irreplaceable, beloved sister to me." "How much did you know about the adoption?" "I didn't know anything. My parents never told me." I was reminded of our college days. The friend who was adopted was John himself. It makes sense why he knew so much about adoption. Perhaps he wanted to prevent others from experiencing what he did. But the real problem starts now. This isn't enough for John to rest in peace. That's why I wanted to get back at my in-laws somehow. Then Jolly seemed to remember something. Why did I forget until now? I'm really an idiot. Did you remember something when I said I'd help you? Before, I had installed a surveillance camera in the house. Surveillance camera? Yes, it's very small, so I doubt anyone noticed. Can we check it now? Yes, we can. The footage showed both of them verbally abusing John in the living room. They were calling him useless, saying they shouldn't have adopted him. And this went on for hours. Why didn't I realize this sooner? As we checked more footage, we discovered damning evidence. I felt a rage I had never known before. Jolly seemed to share that feeling. We got ready and headed to confront John's parents. "May we have a word? We're busy." "It won't take long." "You two are responsible for John's death, aren't you?" "What are you talking about all of a sudden?" "Stop with the bad jokes. You can't run from this. But there's no proof we did anything. Even the police said it was a suicide." "Exactly. Even if Jolly is my daughter, that's inexcusable." "Which one of you has the nerve to say that?" "Look at this." Jelly had prepared a laptop. The screen displayed footage from the day John died. You didn't notice, did you? John and I had cameras installed all over the house. What? I immediately checked the camera footage. As mentioned in the letter, The video clearly showed them forcing John to take pills. Other footage showed them adding what appeared to be sleeping pills to his drink, rendering him dazed before their actions. How did you? We had cameras installed. Wait a minute. Darling, my father-in-law tried to stand up, but I stopped him. I'm sorry, but trying to escape is futile now. What? Then the sound of approaching police cars could be heard. Please give up now. With that, my in-laws were taken away by the police. Of course, this wasn't the end of everything, but I felt a slight relief in my heart. Following that, my in-laws were charged with murder using the camera footage as evidence. The thought of what could have happened if Jolly hadn't set up the camera was chilling. Are you okay, Jolly? I'm fine, but your biological parents, those people aren't my parents or anything. They are just criminals. As a result, the company my father-in-law managed went bankrupt. Well, it was already on the brink of collapse, so it was just a matter of time. Then the two received a guilty verdict, now confined behind bars. I decided to visit them, wondering how they were holding up. Furthermore, it turned out that my father-in-law's cancer was a lie. It was just an excuse to live with us. He couldn't meet me because he was unwell, but I could meet my mother-in-law. You seem quite well. What are you doing here? I just came to check on you. How's life behind bars, huh? Ideally, you just pass away and make things easier. You really are despicable. I'll take that as a compliment. Do your best to keep living. Goodbye. And so I returned to the in-laws' house. Jolly and I started preparing to move out. But to think John was adopted. Regardless, he was an important brother to me, right? That doesn't change anything. We moved to a new place and began living together. Later, I took over as the president of the company Jon left behind. From now on, Jolly and I will carry on John's unfulfilled wishes, living with them in our hearts. I hope to meet